Hey, welcome to this review for the uke guide of my bottle brown Soprano outdoor ukulele. This is the second generation model, and it's really kind of fascinating. Outdoor Ukulele is a company in Bend, Oregon, and they came up with a prototype and tried to distribute it on through not social media but through crowdfunding. And I believe that effort didn't pass, but they decided to make it anyway. And the first version was not well received. People really didn't like it. It had a really square neck. It didn't have good tuning pegs. The frets were really high on the instruments. When you press down, it actually caused the string to bend and go out of tune. And although they worked, and I've got one, that was not well received. So the company went and threw basically the entire design out and started over, and actually then made a tenor, and then made this, the Soprano version. And this has been out for a couple of years, and they have nothing to change because I'll just kind of put a spoiler here. This is perfection as it comes to really a plastic, or in this case, a polycarbonate instrument. They also have polycarbonate laced with carbon fiber if you're interested. So let's talk about it. Basically, these are still available, and they will be for the unforeseen future. The entry-level model is $115, and when you start adding things like different color tuners, it might go up to $125, or if you get the model that's laced with carbon fiber, it's supposed to be stronger and a little brighter in sound. I don't know, but those sell for $155. So it's legitimate money for what you'd normally be paying for maybe the next level up with the Acappella or the Ohana sort of investment. So it's definitely not a $50 throwaway ukulele. And that's maybe what sends some people away, because they look and they say, oh, it's just a plastic ukulele. Why does it cost so much? And we'll get to that in just a minute. So I think that this thing is worth every penny and more because there's a peace of mind with it. My last school, I had them, when we built a new school, I asked if we would buy ukuleles, and they said sure. So we bought a set of ukuleles, and we got these. And ultimately, although they're not cheap, they offer a pretty good discount to schools. This one was not one of those purchases of our schools, but we ended up with 60 tenors and 10 sopranos, and they ended up with about a 40% discount off of the base price for schools, which is just incredible that they do that. So, but they aren't affected by temperature and heat. They go as cold as you can go, and they go warmer than you can make it. So if you are living in a warm environment where your car gets melting hot in the summer, this will not melt. Your strings might. Your strings might suffer from that, but the instrument itself won't. If you want to take it in the water, you're fine, with the exception of the metal geared tuners. And there might even be a solution for that, and we can talk about that too. So the peace of mind you have with this, with other ukuleles, you've got to worry about, oh goodness, what's going to happen if I leave that in my car in the summer or in the winter or whatever, dealing with humidity. None of that with this instrument. So just that peace of mind, and with the quality overall, it's worth more than you pay for it. The build is perfect because it is simply molded to specifications, exact specifications. Every one is the same. There's no variation, and I can vouch for that, having unpacked and tuned on a regular basis 70 of these, not to mention my own, during the last school year. So they are incredibly standard. There is no other model that I think that can boast that level of durability, and part of it I think comes from the material they use, the combination of the polycarbonate and the combination of the polycarbonate with carbon fiber. It's just not as flexible as ABS, if you want to put it in that context. So the final pieces, there are some pieces that are glued together at the last part of the process. If you want, they'll actually put strap-ons on them for you, and you can do that. So it's a flawless build. I mean, very seldom are you going to say that, but I mean, the only negative, and there's no way around it, is there's a little injection molding button right there on the back. It even has the name of the seals who make them at the very, very top. hard to read that in that light. I'll see if I can turn it so you can read it. I don't know if we're going to get that. Probably not going to get that. But there's actually a little stamp that they put up there too that's tooled into it, which is neat. So it's, I mean, you're not going to find a better build than this. Again, it's not Luther in the same way that a like solid wood instrument would be, but it's a flawless build. The appearance is plain, very plain. In fact, a lot of people are going to think it's a toy. If you get the clear one, people will bug you about, can you put lights in it? The answer is yes, by the way. There's the blue one that gets a little more flashy. There was a purple one, limited run that they did. People love. So the appearance gets kind of more interested. But otherwise, they're kind of plain looking. And that's okay. But there's nothing, special here. And even though you do have these front markers, I wish they could have molded them in the side, but there are no side dots. So if you want side dots, you'll have to get out your Sharpie, silver Sharpie, and put them on yourself. So they're available. You can order one at outdoorukulele.com, and there are some dealers that do carry them. In my local area, I know there are 2 dealers that have some outdoor ukulele. Now, where this thing shines is its playability. It is unbelievable. There are discussions about where the actual template and the measurements came for this instrument that are supposed to be made based off of another very famous ukulele maker. But the neck is about the same thickness. We'll get to that in a second or two as other ukuleles. But the profile is still squarish, but rounded squares. And it's incredibly comfortable to play, and the action is incredibly low, making this instrument really enjoyable to play. I know a number of people that have bought these that also own very expensive wood instruments, and they reach for this first. Number one, because it's always out, they don't have to put it away. But number two, because it's so darn easy to play. The strings are so low, and it requires so little effort, and the back and the thumb and that flat, wide neck is so attractive. And by the way, it's not that wide. In fact, the nut itself is thinner. We'll talk about that too. But the general feel of it is pretty darn amazing. Now, where it lacks and where it doesn't get a perfect rating is sound, because number one, it's a plastic sound. And number two, it's a little quiet, which is great in a classroom. But it also kind of has a darkish tone, as you heard when I was playing it. It's not an unpleasing tone. It's not a bad ukulele tone. There's nothing awful about it. It has a little bit of sustain, but it's not super. And if you play in a group, you get lost sometimes. I've taken my tenor to jams at times, and I'll be playing, and suddenly it's like, am I even playing? So it doesn't have the punch of some other ukuleles, and that's okay, because for what you have, it's pretty amazing. Now, the other thing is it does get a little percussive. So if you're doing something like, let's see if I can get the beginning of House of Gold going. You really get that percussive sound. It really shouts out for some reason with this design, the outdoor ukulele. So that rip that you get when you're strumming is really present, and that's not a bad thing. It's just a unique thing to that sound. So if you're going to play the beginning of House of Gold, it'll sound really good on an outdoor ukulele. So let's talk about some specifics with this instrument. The scale length is soprano. It goes from the nut to the saddle, which are both molded in, 13.5 inches, 12 frets to period, but to the body as well. No side marker dots. Standard double bout ukulele. Soundboard, polycarbonate. Back and sides, polycarbonate in your choice of a few colors. The bridge is polycarbonate and has a really excellent way to change the strings, and it's true in the tenor too. So there are a lot of people that flip out about changing strings. Other than dealing with this end of the matter, this side couldn't be any easier. They've got these nice little holes in there. You tie a knot or a double knot in your strings, feed it through, make sure it gets caught in there, pull it up, you're good to go. So just that simple slotted bridge with kind of a unique styling is really, really good. The bridge the saddle is not adjustable. So the action you get is the action you get, which thankfully, in my experience, is amazing. So with that in mind, that's not a problem, but just so you're aware that you're not going to raise that saddle or lower that saddle on this particular instrument. And the fretboard is flat and not radius. I'm sure they could have molded it that way, but they chose not to, and it works just fine. So, nut and saddle, there's the nut up there. It's not a 0 fret up there like some plastic ukuleles are. This is a actual nut that acts up there, and it's kind of interesting. We'll talk about the size of it, but if I can get on the film, the nut is actually thinner than the neck. If you look, there's a little space on each side of it, which is pretty crazy. And I've also talked about this, I'll just throw this in here too, is there are these strengthening lines that run through the instrument, and if you can see those, I don't know if it's going to stick, you can see it maybe, no, I guess not, but those lines line up perfectly with the strings until you get to down here where they finally, the fan goes wider, but up here, those lines follow the strings perfectly. It's amazing engineering with thought with that in mind. So the finish is a flat polycarbonate. It's not glossy. It isn't slippery. It's not too bad. The overall length is 21 inches, and here's what's crazy. It's 14.9 ounces, which is lighter than my other Sopranos, but it feels heavier. It's not unbalanced. It's not balanced, overbalanced to the top. It just feels heavier, even though it's lighter. I don't understand that. It might just be a mind game. They are now using their own branded tuners. They're actually outdoor ukulele tuners, but these on this one, it's an older model. Let's see if I can get that in here. I've got a table noise that keeps me doing. These are Grovers, if you can see the Grover word right there. So you get open geared tuners, and you can get a choice of silver or gold. The action at the first fret is 0.5 millimeter. The action at the 12th fret, way down here, is 2 millimeters. I mean, it's perfection for low action. It's just ideal. You couldn't ask for a better setup on a ukulele, and every one that I've played is the same. It's wonderful. The nut width, because of those little sides being cut off, the actual nut part itself is only 31.65 millimeters, which is deceiving because the actual space between the strings is 8.56 millimeters, which is about par for the course for a soprano. And the depth of it is 21.51 millimeters at the 3rd fret. So it's about as deep as other ukuleles that I've been working with. I thought that would be really deep on a lot of instruments. And it ends up that it's a pretty standard measurement. What's different is that squareness of the neck, which is really quite wonderful. You don't get any accessories with it. You can buy them. I think the new ones come with the Dario titanium strings. And it's just a fantastic little ukulele. Now, again, you can do whatever you want with this. You can travel with it. You can take it to a school. You can leave it in your car. And the only risk is that somebody else wants to steal it. And people get things stolen out of cars all the time. So just keep that in mind. But there's not a care issue here. I know a number of people who have actually sold their wood instruments and just have gone with their outdoor ukulele because it plays so well. It feels so good to play. And they don't have to worry about the other business of like humidification and other things. So outdoor ukulele. And they also put this really kind of cool decal in there, and they've changed the decal inside a number of times since they started making this instrument. So as you can tell, I'm very fond of this company and what they do and their products. And this ukulele was actually a gift from a member of Ukulele Underground, and I am so thankful for this instrument. I've used it in a lot of ways, a lot of teaching. And will continue to drag it around with me and help other people with it. So the Outdoor Ukulele Soprano, 2nd generation, they don't really call it that. That's the only one that you can buy. In the bottle brown, you can get green and blue for sure, and maybe even the clear-ish. My tenor is a little not clearish. It's an older model, but still similar to this. It's just shrunken down. And I would rate this, if you were to give a ukulele out of 5 possible ukuleles, this one gets like 4.5, and the only knock on it is the fact that it is a little quiet and a little bit dark and doesn't have that wood characteristic sound. And I think that's a pretty amazing rating. And so far, of the ukuleles that I've reviewed underneath the uke guide, this is the highest rated ukulele that I have rated so far. So, hope you enjoyed the review. And if you're considering a ukulele to take around and drag with you, this is definitely one to put on your top list to check out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.